this was the part of the exchange prior to Teixeira's arrest between members of the press corps and Brigadier General Pat Ryder, who's the Pentagon's press secretary.
We continue to review a variety of factors as it relates to safeguarding classified materials. This includes examining and updating distribution lists, assessing how and where intelligence products are shared, and a variety of other steps. I would say, though, that it is important to understand that we do have stringent guidelines in place for safeguarding classified and sensitive information. This was a deliberate criminal act, a violation of those guidelines. And so, again, I think that's important to understand.
Mm-hmm. And that's in response to being pressed. Hey, what are you going to do to make sure classified information doesn't wind up, well, in the hands of
gamers?
Well, yeah, in the hands of gamers like Jack Teixeira, but also in the hands of the press corps. How are you going to make sure, we can cover for you and not be exposed when you're exposed? By the way, do you get the sense that Pat Ryder and the people at the Pentagon are the same people running Bud Light? The same people who didn't
clueless about things that they are doing?
Yeah, didn't know that Dylan Mulvaney had been retained as a spokeshuman? Yeah, anyway, I digress. Glenn Greenwald on Tucker last night, talking specifically about the press here and the important takeaway from their response to this classified doc leak.
The government was lying about this incredibly important war with a nuclear armed power, that we have actual troops deployed on the ground in Ukraine. There's going to be no diplomatic resolution through at least 2023, that Zelensky is planning on using our weapons to strike deep into Russia, which we were told would never happen, risking escalation. He did the job of what journalists claim to do, which is show the public the truth. If you work for the intelligence agencies, you would be furious at this person. You would hate him because he revealed that you just lied. He exposed the truth about what you were doing. What's amazing is the New York Times, the Washington Post, all the people who were at that Pentagon briefing today think the way the CIA and the Pentagon think. They hate this person. It was the New York Times and the Washington Post that did the FBI's work and found the leaker and led the FBI to him. They're demanding that he be punished. They're demanding that the government clamp down and keep things more and more secret. What kind of journalist would ever do that, would want to see a leaker exposed and punished and then demand that the government keep even more secret? But that is what these media corporations are there to do. They love leaks when the CIA and Homeland Security tell them to leak. That's when they disseminate propaganda to the public, like they did during the Trump years when they leaked the transcript between Michael Flynn and Ambassador Kislyak, the most serious kind of leaking crime. The Washington Post did that. Nobody looked for that leaker. Nobody cared. Everybody cheered because it served the interests of the security state. But when it comes to transparency that undermines the agenda of these agencies and that proves to the American people what the truth is, it's amazing that these journalists are on the side of the government and will actually hunt down the leaker and demand that he be punished even more.
Mm-hmm. And the results of these leaks, one, it may put American intel personnel at risk, and that's a serious thing, and again, not to be discounted at all, and which is why that young man should be prosecuted. But as I said, he's not the only one. But it also impacts public policy and what we're going to do and what we're going to finance, because among the other things contained in the documents that were leaked, South Korean officials expressing reticence about sending ammo to Washington that would be sent to Kyiv because South Korea has a policy against arming foreign nations at war. Also, the documents suggest America could push Israel to sell weapons to a third party that would arm Ukrainian forces, allowing Israel to maintain its appearance of advocating for peace by using a cutout. Well, Israel's going to be a lot less inclined to do that now, and so who picks up the freight for the need to continue arming Ukraine? And frankly, what does that even produce, given the intelligence estimate that suggests Ukraine is not winning the war, which is what we've been told for most of the past 14 months? For more on all of this, we're pleased to be joined by our friend Bret Baier, host of Fox News' Special Report, and number one best-selling author, which is 5 p.m. Chicago time, as everybody knows, and number one best-selling author of To Rescue the Republic, Ulysses S. Grant, The Fragile Union, and The Crisis of 1876. Bret, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, good morning.
What about the press corps' performance here?
Yeah, I think it was fairly expected. You know, they go down this track, and the questions don't really vary from that. I think it's fair to point out that the substance of the leaks was not really covered as much as the leak itself. And, you know, I think there are a number of lawmakers saying, you know, why can the New York Times and the Washington Post find this leaker before authorities, number one. Number two, why do they do that and not find the Supreme Court leaker or the, you know, other leakers of documents if it goes the other way ideologically? So I think those are all fair points. That said, having covered the Pentagon for 6.5 years, classification and keeping things secret is a big deal, and it does eventually risk people's lives in the field, and I've seen it firsthand. So that side of it is important.
Well, why do you think he did it? And he's been doing it for 6 to 8 months with this, you know, secret chat group of gamers.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like he was leaking it to the media.
Right.
It wasn't like he was a whistleblower or some altruistic, you know, Edward Snowden had a purpose. He purposely did it to expose the surveillance program. This is more like showing your buddies what's going on and how cool it is that you have access to this info. At least right now, that's what it looks like,
Right.
because it was pretty relegated to that chat room.
But here's the thing. Half the country is going to say Edward Snowden's a hero, and half says he isn't. And, you know, don't hold me to the numbers, but you get what I'm saying. Very divided opinion in Edward Snowden, and very divided opinion on this kid in the wake of everything that's transpired in the last 24 hours. And what's the takeaway from the intelligence agencies? What's the takeaway from the federal government? Is that really what you want? People that engage in sort of vigilante justice, either accidentally in this case, perhaps, or purposefully, like Edward Snowden, because you are lying to the American people. The predicate for all this is you are lying to the American people. You're not being straight, and so you're losing half the country in terms of faith in these institutions. Don't you understand how dangerous that is?
Yeah, of course. But, you know, let's not be put our head in the sand here. Governments do things that they don't tell the American public. And, you know, having to come forward with the special forces in the Ukraine embassy is not exactly something that they wanted to do.
No.
One, because you have U.S. forces on the ground. Two, because it puts those people in jeopardy. They are now threats, and they are at threat. And, you know, the Russians have a different take after that. So you don't want to put that out there. Maybe they have a purpose that they're training Ukrainian forces on the front lines. Maybe they have a purpose that they're protecting the embassy staff. Whatever it is, it becomes very complicated if that's out there. So, governments do that. And is it great? No, but it is a fact of life.
No, I agree with that. And the special forces thing, that doesn't bother me. And I'm not on the camp to think, we have American soldiers fighting Russian soldiers. We don't know that, and there's no indication that that's the case. So I'm not saying that, and I'm not saying that should be disclosed. But I am saying you're telling the American public something that is, according to these intelligence documents, 180 degrees from true regarding how the war is going, and it's a predicate to spend our money on that fight and those people as opposed to the American people. And whether you think that's a good policy or not, that should be debated honestly, and it can't be if you have a media and a security state, to borrow from Glenn Greenwald, colluding to run a disinformation campaign on the American people.
Yeah, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think that there is too much buddy-buddy in how the intelligence community operates with certain members of the media. And you're right, when they want to leak something, it is something like, there's no problem with leaking. And, think about all of the transcripts of Trump with world leaders. I mean, that stuff is the ultimate of leaking. What world leader wants to get on the phone with a president who eventually is going to end up in the Washington Post? And be, frank with that person. So I agree with you. I think that it's a complicated thing, and it is something that, what's in those pages, if all of that is true, and again, you have to make sure that what you're getting is not already adjusted by some evil force like the Russians getting it and putting it out and altering it. Mm-hmm. So you have to figure out what's true, and that's hard, and that's what journalists are supposed to do. Sometimes that doesn't happen in Washington.
Well, did you on Fox?
Yeah.
I mean, this kid's a low-ranking National Guardsman, but I was watching CNN because I always want to see what they're up to, and they're calling him a white supremacist, a racist. Where did they get that information for, and did Fox report on any of that? Allegedly?
No. I mean, we went by the interviews that the Washington Post and the New York Times did with these kids in the chat room.
Kids.
Someone somewhere put that tag on that kid because there were some memes or something that were shared in the chat room that had racist tones to them. That's, I think, where somebody put the tag on it. But listen, we were covering the substance of what was happening, and we'll find out more about the motives and who this kid is over time, I think.
Before we let you go, another topic, just with a new entrant into the Republican race for the presidential nomination, a serious one, and Senator Tim Scott from South Carolina. And, of course, everything that's transpired over the last couple of weeks. What's your handle on the Republican race for the nomination right now? Trump and DeSantis, obviously, but then the question of whether there's a third lane. Where do you see the landscape?
I mean, right now it's all Trump. It really is. I mean, every poll that we look at is not 10 points. It's 20 or 30 points. And there's going to be a bumpy road probably at some point. I mean, these legal things, whether you believe any of them or not, are going to add up, and there will be some part of the population that says, I'm tired of the chaos and we need to win, et cetera, and so there will be a lane for an alternative. I just don't know, how many lanes. There's probably only one. And so the fewer candidates there are, the more likely there is that there's one possibility as far as an alternative. But I do think Tim Scott obviously brings to the table a number of things that are, really attractive. He's got a great story, and he's going to be an interesting candidate. Nikki Haley has had some success raising money and bouncing around the country. If I had to guess, I wouldn't say that some of them choose to get in. Maybe Mike Pompeo doesn't get in. Maybe others don't get in, considering what they're looking at.
He is Bret Baier, host of Fox News Special Report, 5 p.m. to Chicago time. #1 best-selling author of To Rescue the Republic, Ulysses S. Grant, The Fragile Union, and The Crisis of 1876. Bret, thank you as always. Appreciate it.
We'll see you.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You're listening to Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Folks, when shopping for a home mortgage, how much is great service, low closing costs, and competitive interest rates worth to you? At Townstone Financial